Okay, we're live. 235, 235. Let me check an email real quick. Roofing estimate. Faith. This is Keith. Welcome to How to Build Your Own Home. We're live chat. I'm just trying to make sure there's a couple of emails that came in and people were asking me some questions. So I'm trying to find a couple of those so they have those to go to right away. And there was one from, here we are. Got it. Okay. I wanted to make sure I had that. I wanted to go over a couple of things real quick as we get going here. The market's changing pretty fast. There's a lot of things happening in the market. United States just was downgraded on their credit score, and that's pretty big. The last time that happened, it was under extreme duress. And I think that there's a lot of effort to cover over the market, meaning not really telling people what's going on. A lot of banks that are underwater are getting bailed out, but behind the scenes, and it's not being told, and they're signing agreements with the U.S., with FDIC to not report on the assistance they're getting to get bailed out for 5 years. So it's taking a lot more effort to really know what's going on in the market right now. It used to be a lot more transparent 10 years ago, even more transparent, before then, and even more transparent years ago. So right now, it's a real oddball market because there's so much politics at play, a lot of politics at play. We are now entering into a real huge, what you would call power struggle. And it's very similar to what happened in 1876 or 1873, between 1873 to 1875. And let me just give you some history because it's, close to, I would say, over 100 years since that event occurred. Well, at the time, I'm just trying to give everyone some perspective here. I'm not a financial advisor, but this is really, really good stuff to know, really helpful to understand. In 1873, there was a lot of liquidity in the market. There was a lot of currency in the market, all right? Abraham Lincoln printed $400 million of what was called a greenback, and it was in the market. It was great, all right? It was awesome. Well, they had something called the crime of 73, and that's when the banks behind the scenes spoke among themselves, passed memos and all that kind of stuff. When people came into the bank to deposit their greenbacks, all right, they were telling each other to burn them and to reissue everybody a new form of currency. Okay. We are now facing the exact same situation right now. There's a lot of debt on the books. Our government is carrying an enormous amount of debt, and they don't cut back on their budgets. They spend a lot more money. Meanwhile, everybody in the world, we are forced to cut back, streamline our budgets, become more conservative, don't waste, stuff like that. And it would be great if that was the case for everything across the board, but it's not. So our governments are spending more money, even though we're in a pinch and liquidity is tight, interest rates are rising. I did a financial post about a week ago, but I haven't even posted it yet because so many things are changing right now. It's a real topsy-turvy situation. I'm hearing from one end of spectrum that interest rates will go down next year, and you would typically think that's the case because it's an election year. And as a result, they don't want that to be the number one issue, to vote somebody out and vote somebody in. Those that are in power want to make it look like a good year. So in one respect, the interest rates could go down, but in another respect, they could go up. And I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen. If they go up, okay, that affects everybody across the board. It makes, getting a 30-year fixed mortgage more difficult because you can't afford for that. The cost of the house that you can afford suddenly goes from here to there. But then if interest rates drop, and if they drop significantly to even 6% or 5% or even 4.5%, that just opens up the floodgates for what's another a market run and a blow off top situation where now everyone's jumping in at the same time. A lot of people have been pent up and waiting to build, but now if the interest rates drop a full percentage, not just a basis point of 0.1%, but we're talking about a full percentage point or even 2 percentage points, that changes everything. And if you notice what happened a year and a half ago to almost 2 years ago, interest rates were so low that everybody was building and it put a huge amount of pressure on the system. Lumber doubled in price, literally doubled in price. Now you're seeing lumber half the price. OSB was $32 a sheet. It's now $11.50 a sheet. In some places, it's about $12.50. Other lumber yards is up as high as $13 a sheet. So lumber's come down, but what could spike lumber? What could cause lumber to suddenly spike? Well, a lower interest rate, a significantly lower interest rate. So that's what you have to watch out for. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to start to build with the interest rates lower. But if it goes really low, it changes the whole game. All other costs start to go up because now supply and demand kick in. If interest rates go low, now it's going to increase the demand on that interest rate. More people are going to come into the market and try to buy, build a home, etc. And then that's going to increase the supply chain, put more pressure on that, more demand. And as a result, more demand, then higher prices start to surface. So it's kind of a game. It's not quite a game. It's really it's to me, it's like a hurry up and get going situation. If I was in a situation now where I wanted to build, and I'm actually in that situation, building a kind of a mountain retreat for my family, I'm actually kind of having a little urgency that I want to get something started, and I've taken this in chunks. And a lot of owner builders don't see that they can take a lot of the build cost in chunks before they go into a big chunk. For example, your plans or architectural drafting, your geotech, your structural plans, those are all typically within reach. Sometimes it could be $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. Let's get that paid off. Let's get that paid off. Let's get that paid off. Even the land, if you can get that secure, the more you can chunk away without having to put that onto a 30-year fixed mortgage, the better off you are. Then you're able to make the call regardless of what's really going on in the market. You're now equity intensive, meaning that you've got equity in the bag, you've got costs already accounted for. You can literally go to the bank and say, okay, look, I got this paid and this paid and this paid. These are all towards the cost of the home. That's really what could be considered part of your down payment or a chunk of it. So no matter which way you look at it, the more you can chunk away and get things paid off until you get to that point where you're actually needing to build something. And that's what I always like to do in the homes that I build for myself. I want to get all my plans, permitting, a lot of that stuff paid off. So when I'm ready to go, all I have to do is get money. If I need lending from a bank, I go for that amount that I need to get as far as I need for that home. That's just the best route I can give. I wouldn't try to get the full amount lended or budgeted from a bank. It's just my perspective. If you're really tight and you're wanting to cash flow some of this and you really want to stay as low as you possibly can, again, a lot of financial advisors would say 28% of your income is really the cost of your home. And if you're exceeding that, it's kind of a risk they consider. So a lot of financial advisors say that try to stay 28% or less as a total income should go to the cost to maintain a home. Play those numbers, run them for yourself. Again, go to the First Steps course that I have at How to Build Your Own Home. Module number 3 is really a very, very important module. I spent a lot of time on that, and it has a formula. Inside that formula, it helps you understand the cost per square foot in your particular area for a new home of comparable features and and square footage and that kind of thing. And it helps you exclude certain costs like realtor and builder and developer fees. It helps you eliminate those costs so you can get to the real cost per square foot. What does it really, really cost right now to build a home? Now, keep in mind, that number can change within 2 months to a month. So it's financing and numbers. It's a all hands on deck. It's a situation where you really need to be on top of the market at the moment, and that moment's now. So I'm going to give a link um, after I'm done with this slide chat. One of my favorite YouTubers is his name's the Economic Ninja, and he gave a very poignant, cogent post today, and it wasn't full of jokes. He's a jokester, and he's fun, and he's a fireman by trade. This is what he does. He's an actual fireman, and he's kept his job even though he's made a lot of money, and he's very financially stable. He just loves being at the ground zero of everything. So he'll actually give posts from inside the firehouse. He gave a really, really, really poignant post today. I'm going to give a link to that below. I would suggest everyone listen to that. He's fun. He's a common person. He speaks from the hip and also from the heart, and I really appreciate him. Also, Dan with Iallegedly, they've got some boots on the ground. They're constantly talking to small business operators, small and retail operations, and people looking to build, people looking to buy, and they really understand the real estate market, and they're in California. And my number one segment, if the people that listen to this show, they are in Los Angeles. All right. I did some analytics, and one of the number one regions of where people actually dial in and listen to this show, there's a huge segment from Los Angeles. So if you're not listening to those two, and they're both in California, so they have their feet on the ground, and they have a real strong pulse of what's really going on in that market. One's in the southern part of LA, down near Newport, and all the way down through Long Beach. And the other one's the northern part of the state, close to the wine country. So between the two of them, they really understand what's going on in that state. I'm in the Rocky Mountain region, so I really understand what the market is happening here in where I'm living. But I'll give you one little piece of thought. Not only are market dynamics changing quite rapidly, there's a huge migration taking place too. And you might want to consider that and think about where people are moving to. And that's also changing local markets. So what's happening in one state may not necessarily be happening in another state. And that's also going to be a factor. So when you listen to financial experts and analysts, they may have a macro view, but they don't understand the micro view. And module 3 and the first steps will really help you understand the micro view, what's happening in your market and what are the costs to build in your particular area. So I don't want to talk too much, just a little market update. I got a lot of questions here. Let me kind of jump to I have one here on my phone that I wanted to get to. And it was a student that asked me, and this is from Melissa, if I'm correct, someone named Melissa. I walked the neighborhood near my house to find some lead for subs. This framer has been doing framing for at least 3 big houses in my area. The only issue is he does not have insurance. How can I overcome that problem? Can I carry the liability insurance and get workman comps insurance on my own? I'm building a granny flat in my backyard, so I figured my home insurance may cover the liability. Your opinion? Yeah, you could actually just hire them as laborers and then just get the workman's comp and take care of it that way. You just have to make sure that they're also legal residents. All right. So that might be an issue as well. You check that out. I've done that a lot of times. I know if you're building in some states, Washington, Seattle's very big on this. So is California. So is New York. Other states like Florida and Texas, they're not that particular. But some states will really put a hammer on you that you've got to make sure that you pay workman's comp if you're bringing them in-house, if they're going to actually work for you and your company. So I would recommend that you can do that. It's not a problem. You just want to check their quality because now you're assuming that quality. All right. And you're also assuming liability that it's done right. It's one thing to hire a framing crew, their insurance and they're liable, and you give them plans and you have in that description of responsibilities that they will frame per plan. Well, now you're assuming that because you're now hiring some other people just as laborers. So you've got to have a lot of trust on their ability, knowing that they can do what they can do. So check that out. And if they haven't gotten any insurance, you might want to ask why. Here's what's happening. Um, it's I don't want to get conspiratorial, but it's sinister. A lot of insurance companies are pulling away from insuring homes with high risk areas. Montana is getting hit really bad because of supposed fires. Florida is getting hit really, really bad with dropping insurance because of hurricanes. And what's happening is these properties have loans on them, mortgages on them. And a bank can, according to the lending that's been signed off when you closed on that home, if you do not have insurance on that property, they can foreclose on you. And there's some stuff happening. And so you really want to make sure that you have insurance during the course of construction and that you'll be able to have insurance after it's built. Because if it's under a loan and you've got a mortgage on it, you want to make sure you've got a good policy on there and you're not going to get messed around with. The Ninja gave a great post on that, and a lot of stuff's happening with regard to that. Catherine Austin Fitz did an incredible report on how certain big money interests actually come into communities and do things like this in tandem with insurance companies and cause people to lose their properties. Then they come and blade the properties and put a whole new commercial building up in place. So be aware, be a watchman, be attentive, be astute as to what's going on in the market, especially your local market. It's very, very important these days because you never know when you get caught up into stuff, and you don't want to get caught up into a knot and not being able to get out of that situation. So be aware of insurance. All right, let's get some questions here. Alex says, hello, everybody. Welcome all. Cash will be king. You're right, David. And you will get 50% off because of it. This is a really, really big issue. My subcontractors are constantly giving me a price for cash and a price for full bid that's paid by check. All right. And cash is going to be a rare situation. And if you can hold some cash here and there, all the better. Like, for example, I just went to Lowe's and I had to return some lumber. Lowe's would not put the return on a credit card. They had to give me cash. So I had cash come back to me, and then I just credited to my client a certain amount, the same amount of money, and showed them the receipts. But I kept the cash. Cash is really a very, very, very interesting tool when it comes to hiring people. If you need just a mason just to do a wainscoting for 3 feet up, and you say, hey, can you do that for $8 a square foot? And they says, I'll do it for $6 if you pay me cash. So that's where cash comes into play. But a lot of this is going to be out of pocket. And if you've got a lending situation where a bank is actually cutting checks, you may just have to be out of pocket that entirely. But at least you're saving against the total amount that you're trying to get, lending for the home. So cash is going to be pretty cool. It'd be cool if they could do gold and silver and other things as well. But a lot of subcontractors are not privy to that just yet. Robert asked a question. My build may sit without siding over the winter. What do you think of building covering products like Delta Vent SA versus standard Tyvek house wrap? The Delta Vent is an adherent membrane product. Yes, very good question. The wind is going to whip that stuff and it's going to come off. And the problem is a lot of siding guys will just staple it on. And as a result, it's just the wind is eventually going to tear it off. I actually, when I deal with that kind of thing, I look at the roofing synthetic products because they're better than the siding synthetic products. You just have to make sure if it's water permeable or if it's full airtight, or in some areas you don't want it airtight. You want kind of a moisture barrier, but not totally impermeable. You want that wall to breathe. It's different for all climates. So make sure that you study that religiously. but I like to put stuff on with roofing tabs. So a roofing tab is a larger face, and when you put it on, it's got more surface area, and it's not like a staple where it's going to flap and come off. I put a lot of siding material on, and I put my synthetic right on with roofing tabs, and it doesn't come off, and it lasts quite a while. You want to seal that off. Windows are going to be a big issue. You're going to want to make sure you seal off the full window, because that water is going to get behind in some area, and it can get down into your pan, into the window seal, and do some damage. So you're going to have to be very cautious. And if you plan to build a home like that, and you know it's going to go through the winter like that, and you can think in advance, make sure you have an 18-inch or plus eave on the home. That way water is going to be shedding away from the home. You don't want to build a home that's like a monopoly house, those little monopoly houses with no eave. There's one down the street from me, and there's already some water damage on it. So you don't want to have a home that's going to have to go through weathering. Make sure there's a good eave on that home, and check that. Also watch the weather when it's up there. Is it sheeting from the north? Is the rain coming from the north, south, east? Which way is it coming from? How best to protect that? Same thing with doors. I put a nice liquid membrane. I love liquid applied materials, especially on the pan of the door, because water could sheet in there for quite some time before you get that protected. Same thing with your subfloor. There's a lot of great products that you can put on the subfloor to protect it. I had a job up north, and we got some snow that came in, and we shoveled it all out of the house, and we got it all dried off. And we went and hurried and got some liquid material, a KM coating material. I've talked about this once or twice before. And we put it all in some areas where it was puddling. And that way it was easy to vacuum it up, and it never did any damage to the substrate. So it was great. So there's a lot of great products out there. Keith, do you believe in Buffett's saying, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy? I'm not a fan of Buffett. Him and Munger, they gave $44 million to the I think it was $44 billion to the Gates Foundation. If you can make those two connections, you kind of know what I'm talking about. So he's great at making money, but he's not great at making culture or making community or making anything else. And when somebody is making culture, making for a better world, then I really listen to them. But his main thing is when everyone's scaring and selling, that's when he's buying. And then when everyone is buying, that's when he's selling. It's just the opposite. If that's the way we're supposed to be successful, fine. But I think that we can be successful as a part of a community, as a part of a culture. So I have questions on Buffett's real connections and what he really wants to do in the world. So Texas, let's see, Texas sheepherders. Did I say that right? Sheepherders? That's a cool name. I watch Economic Ninja too. Great. So do I. You know what I'm talking about. Hey. He has a snap that's pretty cool. I follow him. Let's see. I'm getting behind. I'm sorry if I'm getting behind here. Let's see. Where are we here? Cash will be king. Investors. So David asked the question. Investors bought single-family dwellings like never before in history, drove these prices out of reach, but investors are fickle, and when they see they aren't making money, they get out. And that's when the price of those actually will start to come down. You're right. Watch what other investors are doing. It's key. I believe that the economy and money and finance they have to be in your wheelhouse. You have to understand them. You have to know what's going on. You have to be a watchtower on your own home, a watchman on your own house, and looking at what's really going on in the market. And it really tells you a lot about what's happening. And we are in a pivotal change. We had FedNow that was implemented in July. Most people don't know what that is. And then in the 24th of this month, we're going to see the BRIC nations implement their currency. And if you don't know what that is, research it. But the BRIC nations are going to implement a new currency that is going to be partially backed by gold. How much, we don't know. If it's backed by gold, then it's a more secure reserve currency than the US dollar. If that's the case, you're going to see a lot of people leave the dollar and go to a different currency. Brazil might back it with oil. China might back it with gold. Iran might back it by oil. They're going to back that with a basket of value-based products and assets to actually bolster that currency. So keep that in mind. If that happens, it's going to change our market drastically. All right. Japan's going through a really brutal situation right now because they're not part of that, and they don't have a really well-backed currency, and they've been piling on debt like there's no tomorrow. And so watch what happens in the UK, Britain, Japan, other places. Listen to what's going on. Follow a lot of financial advisors. Rather than watch TV and entertainment, listen to what's going on in the market. It's actually more dramatic and more of a story to tell than what's really on TV. Let's see. David asks, my guess, tons of homes come on the market as investors get out to pull their money out. True. I watched a really interesting gentleman gave a post, and he went to the mall where Back to the Future was filmed. Okay. Very close to where I grew up in Southern California. And the mall was half empty. It was a ghost town inside that mall. I could not believe it. I'd actually walked through that mall many times when I was a kid. And to see that mall literally boarded up, half of the stores inside it were boarded up, I could not believe myself. And this is what's happening. There's a lot of dynamics changing in the market. Amazon has taken out a lot of mom and pop stores, but Amazon is also suffering right now because people are buying less. So people are holding back. People are pulling back because they don't know what's going to happen. That's why cash is king. Newbie here. Let's see. Sunflower Smiles. That's a great name. Sunflower Smiles. Newbie here. Always hire general contractor before, but I have energetic ambition and confidence to assume that role. Great. That's called the American experiment, or what you call the transcendental movement back in the late 1800s, mid 1800s. You had a lot of philosophers and thinkers that said, hey, we don't need Europe. We don't need Britain. We don't need to buy their stuff. We can make it here. And people started to build their own textiles. And as a result, we became a very industrious people. We have to be that way again. It's true. We've given so much money to third parties, middle managers to handle things for us. Even our politicians don't handle things. We'll hire a city manager, give him a big, huge, fat salary. Then all the power goes to him, and city manager or mayors and city council members, they don't even know what's going on. So we're going to face a huge backlash from that. We're going to actually have to take over a lot more responsibility over the long run. Hype stonks. My framer said they would reduce the price by 20% if I paid cash. True. You're seeing that happen. And you may even talk with the bank and find out how you could possibly get some cash for that. The only way to do that, just thinking business-wise, is I've seen other contractors. I worked for another contractor many, many years ago, and he had one company that was basically the general contractor company, something LLC. And then he had another company, which is something LLC, and that was the carpentry. They did a lot of finished carpentry and whatnot. So when he wrote up a contract to do some work, he actually had control of the finances to such a degree where this company could build this company, all right? And then this company would build the bank. So when the bank gives them money, then this company could actually issue them cash and pay his guys in cash. It was rare he did that, but if you're a little more creative, you can find out ways to do that. But most importantly, if you do have cash, savings cash at home, that's a great way to do that. It's a great way to save on the cost of the home. Just make sure on the budget side, you put the real amount in because you want to know what you save against during the course of the build. David says, hit the thumbs up button if you like the stream. Yes, please do. I appreciate that. Ian, great name, Ian. I've got a nephew named Ian. I'm interested in building a spec house where I self-fund it fully and perform a large amount of the work myself. What are your thoughts on this idea? Kind of risky right now. It's not something I would go into. If you can self-fund it and you're not in debt, then that's a different story. How much of it I would do? I wouldn't do a lot of it. It depends on how much time you have. If you're retired and you're maybe in your mid 50s and you've got a lot of energy, fine. But it's going to take you much longer than you think. And you may not enter the market at the point you may want to enter the market. Like I just did a spec home and we finished it, sold it a couple of months ago. But if I would have finished it 4 or 5 months earlier, what do you think we would have gotten out of that, honey?
At least 10% more.
Probably 10% more. And if I would have finished it another 6 months before that,
probably 30%.
Another 30% more. So that's the market you're dealing with. So if you're able to really know when you can finish it off, and if you hit that market just right, great. If not, you could be sitting on it for a very long time, and you may end up forced to put some renters in there, and then you never know what's going to happen to the property then. So be very, very careful. It depends on how much of risk you can absorb and how long you can withstand that before it's sold. So let's see. I'm interested. See, Hypestonk says, hi. He also had his installation sub recommendation that does the same, 20% off for cash deal. Yeah. And the reason why is because they imagine having cash, you're paid in cash. There's no tracking. You don't put it in the bank. Really, you may put it in your personal account, but you're not going to put it in your business account. It's called under the table. That's why they call it under the table. It's kind of like if I had a motor scooter out in my garage and it's kind of beat up, and I said to my nephew, "Yeah, I'll sell it to you for $200. I need cash." And I have that cash, and then that cash is just free for all, whatever I want to do with that cash. That's how powerful it is. And then there's a movement to get rid of cash. So I can't go into that, but it's pretty huge. So follow it. That's why following finances and the economics is really big, to know what's coming. And that's why it's really good. Probably one of the best times to build is now, not 2 years from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. It's really now, because you're going to be able to take advantage of opportunities now that you're probably not going to have in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. Think about that. Put your noggin together, put all those concepts together, that it's not going to be as easy to build a home in 5 years as it is now. So I'm excited to help people as much as I can, but I kind of see what's coming down the pike. Be aware of that. Let's see here. Let's see. I skipped up. We're getting close. Say, let's see. Cash can. Let's see. Also had his installation sub. We're building a retirement house, all cash. Great. Should we still ask for a quote, both for check and cash? Yeah, ask them. The more the subcontractor is labor only, the better off you're going to be able to do that. But if your subcontractor has a lot to buy that's material wise, then they may not be able to do the discount they want to. Framers, yes. Others, maybe so. Others, maybe not at all. Electricians, they're not going to go that route. They have a lot of purchase materials. Same thing with plumbers. They may give a subtle discount, but not as much as a full-fledged subcontractor that's 90 to 95% labor. The more labor they are, the more they can give you that discount. Okay. As Jose Segja says, just want to say hi. I love your videos. Thank you. Appreciate that. Out here working city bus driver for the city of Phoenix. Boy, I bet it's hot down there right now. Beginning process to be out in a home in Narco, California. So thankful for all your knowledge. You're welcome. I appreciate the comment. Another question. We're getting quotes for impact windows. Ugh. Do you recommend low E glass? I'm in Florida, but not really sure if it's worth the added cost. How close are you to the coast? Right. In Maine, I was mentoring a student some time ago, and because of the high winds that was hitting that window, those windows have to maintain a higher pressure, wind pressure from the outside coming to the inside. And it was quite substantial. So that's a big issue, to be honest with you, for those that live on the coast, especially the East Coast, where you get uh, the northerners that come across the Atlantic and really barrel down on that coast. And it would be advantageous to get those windows that can maintain a higher degree of wind pressure against them. I don't have that much of a problem here, but other parts they do. And in fact, it's part of their code, it's part of the requirement. So check into that. Questions. Keith, when building a custom home, what items do you suggest that your clients pay for, and what should only be included in the construction loan? Okay, custom home. When building a custom home, what items do you suggest that your clients pay for, and what should only be included in the construction loan? Interesting question. It depends on how deep their pockets are. I've built multi-million-dollar homes with people that are straight up cash. I've built homes where half of it is cash and half of it is lending. And if it's cash, they spend the cash first before they go after the lending, because that way they're avoiding interest rates on the construction loan. So cash is king. Use that up as much as you can, and then use the loan after that. And so that's what I would do. I would spend a lot of things with a custom home. I don't like to build a home when the client is involved in purchasing things or talking to my subcontractors or trying to finagle deals behind the scenes and I'm not involved. I've turned down a couple of clients just in the past couple of months. One client wanted to live in an RV while I built his home. Not going to go there anymore. I had another client that was wanting to hack up my contract and redline it left and right. And he says, all contracts are negotiable. I go, not mine. So I don't want to enter into a situation that's already an adversarial situation. If they don't trust me, if they don't allow me to run the project the way that I run things, that's most comfortable for me based upon my experience. It's not that I'm a control freak. I just don't need two chiefs in the kitchen. So if I like it when they go and select a plumbing or they select their lighting package, and I'll give them 2 or 3 different sources to go to. And then I call that source and tell them, okay, deliver it and send me the invoice. That's easier. But when they're going off and buying a light here and then another light there and then another light there, and I don't know where things are coming from, and it's all coming from a bank lending situation, it gets to be a real headache. The more you can, if you're going to get a contractor and if you're going to hire a contractor, you want to have everything designed and decided as much as you possibly can up front. If you're going to try to do that ad hoc during the course of the process, it can be an absolute torture. And that contractor, if you really upset them, they can hit you up with change order costs, and it's all written in their contract. I can hit 1 or 2 clients up right now with thousands of dollars of change orders. I haven't done that, but one of these days I'm going to do that. Hope that helps you answer your question. As far as what they can do up hand, they can pay their architectural, geotech, land, structural. They get all that paid up front. The more they get that done, the faster you can go. And I think that's one thing they can pay for right away. Hope that helps. It's Jose Seja. Sorry, beginning process to building a dream home in Norco, California. Great, Texas. Do you think 40-year mortgages will be implemented anytime soon? They're already here. Mm-hmm. In some markets, they're already here, especially with some private lenders. And it's not something I'd recommend. If you can go with a 15-year-old, that's all power to you. You'll get a lower interest rate. Am I right, honey? If you go,
Yep.
You'll get a lower interest rate if you can go with a 15-year mortgage. That's why I say if you can get like I'm about ready to do a build for my family, and we pay off the land next week. We've paid off architectural, geotech, even the septic design, even the structural design, all paid off. Water meter's been paid off. That gets installed next week. So when we really start, we actually started the excavation, and a lot of the equipment that I use for that's been paid off. So it's just really my own time. So I'm going at this and trying to get as much as I can done under my own belt, within my own pocket, so that when I get, for example, my excavation bid came in at $96,000. And I said, no, I'm going to do it myself. And so I'm going to save quite a bit of money on excavation costs. So I'm waiting until the last minute until we really need to put a chunk of money on it, something north of $15,000. Foundation is your big one, all your framing. That's where you really need your money. And that's what I'm trying to hold back on until I borrow only for that and not all these ancillary things that kind of get in the way. The least amount I can put on that whole mortgage, if I'm going to do a mortgage, the better. Let's see. Chris Martin. Hello, Chris. Can you go into more detail about framing costs? Does the $14 per square foot include the lumber, sheathing, WRB, trusses, nails, labor? No. Trusses are going to be one price. Lumber cost is going to be another price. Your framing is going to be, labor is going to be another price. Now, some framers will include nails. Some of them don't. Most of them do include nails in their package because they don't like to call up and say, hey, we're short nails and have to wait a day to get nails on a job site when they can just get them on their own account. Hardware, hangers, that kind of stuff, they won't supply for that. That's part of the lumber package. So basically 3 packages. Your truss package, which could include your floor and roof trusses, and then all your lumber package, and then all your framing. So 3 different line items. If you look at the budget that's downloadable, if you've purchased the program at How to Build Your Own Home, it's got a really powerful budget. And if you look at the framing, it's broken up in that exact way. So let's see. Right now, $14 is about a mid-range. I'm seeing some get framing for as low as $7 a square foot, some as high as $35 a square foot. Framing labor has come down substantially. So has the framing lumber package. In fact, my truss package on a recent job, they lowered the truss bid about a couple $100 because lumber came down. They're very honest, and they just give a straight up percentage on the cost of lumber. So it was nice to see that happen. So a question here, let's see. If we are buying the materials, how much should labor be? Just looking for a rule of thumb for framing. That's a very good question. It's almost 50%, not always. It depends upon the complexity of the home. I know that if you own a commercial business and you are going to do an improvement on that business, you can write off, you have to check with your tax man on this, but if you do the labor for free, typically you can write off the 50% of the material cost as depreciation against the total cost to build that thing you're trying to build. All right. Check with the tax person on that. You want to double check. But there are advantages to doing the labor yourself, but not paying yourself, but you can still apply that as depreciation. That's on commercial jobs. But if you're buying materials, how much should it be? It can range between 50-50, meaning that whatever the material costs, it could be 50% of that or the same amount. And I've seen it range from 30% to as high as 80%. I was doing a commercial job several years ago, and I had an artist. We hired an artist to build a custom light feature, very expensive. It was $36,000 that they installed in a commercial job. And the actual materials on that were probably maybe $2,000, $3,000. But the creativity behind it and the time it took to build that's where most of the $36,000 came from. So that's just way insane on labor, that you're paying in a massive amount for labor versus the actual material. But the good rule of thumb can be around 50%, meaning that let's say that the total framing is $100,000. 50% of that can be into labor. It's not always the case. It depends. For example, if I'm going to build a home, and if I have, let's see if I run some numbers here, and it's 2,000 square feet, and I times that by 14, we're at 28,000 for the labor, and you're probably very close to the same in your lumber package right now. It wasn't the case, a year and a half ago. So it's different for every field. Take, for example, stucco. Stucco takes 3 separate crews. Framing is 1 crew. Stucco's 3 separate crews, and there's a huge amount of labor, but there's also a lot of material cost. And depending upon the cost of materials, that can fluctuate. It could be 40%, it could be 60%. Finished carpentry, that's probably closer to 70%. Of the total cost to do something is 70% could be labor, because we're talking about, cheaper materials. So it's really different. Painting, I pay a painter, $275 a square foot within a 10-foot wall. This room I'm in here is a 10-foot ceiling, and I would pay him $3.75 for any per square foot, and that's the square feet of the home, and that would accommodate for 3-tone paint. All right. I know other painters that are $425 a square foot. Some are, $325 a square foot. So there's a range in there, but that includes all the materials. How much of that is labor? I would say more than 50% of that, closer to 60, maybe upwards of 65% of that is labor. The rest of it's material. So every trade is different. Every trade is different. David asked the question, if you pay cash, do not pay it up all front. Right. Bad idea. Leave 1/3 to 1/4 of when they are done. If it's less, they might take off before they finish. Always keep them on the hook. Always have a carrot and a stick in your hand. Keep that carrot all the way here. Framing is probably the most notorious one. I've seen people pay off their framer, and then they have it inspected, and you can't get them back. And he says, well, it's going to cost you for me to come back. You want to withhold, like on a 2,000 square foot home, I would hold back probably $2,500 to $3,000. And that's for, any bracing that's not done right, or any boxing out of HVAC, or any other blocking that you may need, fire blocking or blocking in the shower or something like that. I would withhold enough so that you can call him back and he'll come back and do that. Always hold something back, especially with something that hasn't been inspected. Once it's been inspected, then it's another story. But in my program at How to Build Your Own Home, there's a checklist on framing. All you have to do is download that checklist and go through it and make sure, I want to go check this part. Okay, I see that's done. I'm going to go check that part, and I see it's done. So it helps you go look for things that should be done that may not be done with the framer. And when you go through that checklist yourself, you feel confident in finally releasing that total amount of money to them, especially after their framing inspection's done. Cash will work until the Fed coin is implemented. True. Build now while you have the ability to use cash. They could do a crime of 73, just what the banks did back then, and they recalled all the currencies. There's nothing stopping the Federal Reserve from telling all the banks to tell everyone, never everyone can buy and sell strictly with the use of their phone. Please burn all the cash that comes into the banks. They've done that in Sweden. Sweden, you don't buy with cash. It's all digital. And so that could happen here. So be aware of it. Be ready for it. That's why there's never a better time than building as soon as you can make it happen. All right. Across the road from the beach. Every transaction we tracked. Correct. Dan asks, question about ground or surface water. We did some of our own excavation for a walkout basement, and we found some water coming up from the ground. It wasn't much. Is that a concern? Yes. What time of year was that? Was it after a rainstorm? Was it after a long winter? Was the water dirty or murky? how much per gallons per minute do you think is coming up? Was it coming up the middle of the foundation or closer to the side of the foundation? And if you dug a hole and then you saw it, was it coming out of the side of the hole or was it coming up from the bottom of the hole? You want to find out how deep it's coming up from, or it's coming from the side, meaning from the side of a hill or something like that. You really want to find out the source, if it's deep under or if it's from the side. I did a post on a video about 2-3 months ago, and they had water coming out of the hill, all right, coming right through the house. It was on piers, and they had to dig everything out, and they're going to put rock and gravel in there, and they're planning on the water just coming right through the piers, just like as if the home was built on the beach in Malibu, California. The waves would come in and out. It would just wash right through that whole undercarriage of the entire home. So you're going to want to find out where that water is coming from and get a hydrologist out there, a geotech, either one of them, probably a hydrologist. You want to find out where that water is coming from and how low are you from a possible ground source. Meaning, are you down low on a hill and it could be way, way up that way? My main concern is to how deep that water is. Like if this is the foundation of your home and that water is coming from the side, then that could be ameliorated. But if the water is coming up, you're creating what's called kind of a isostatic pressure that's going to constantly get put underneath that foundation. And that's where I see foundations go bad, is because there's this massive amount of water pressure being pushed up against the bottom of that foundation, and there's nowhere for it to go. And so that's where you actually start putting drains underneath your foundation, literally drains underneath your foundation. So if water comes up, it's going to find that drain and it's going to take it somewhere away from the home. So get some geotech on board, get a hydrologist on board, try to get some help on how best to ameliorate that. Do not pour the foundation until you figure that out. Okay. Question, let's see here. Oops. Oh, I scanned too far up there. I missed some. Okay. Leslie, can we still receive an invoice so we have a paper trail when paying cash in case there's a problem with the work? Yes. Ask them to send an invoice. Now, if you're using QuickBooks or something like that, they can delete that invoice later on if they want to, but you want a copy of it. And it could be just an estimate. Now, it could come as an estimate, may not come as an invoice. And either way, you'll have that record. So ask for that. That way there's a transition. And then when they do that, if you're working with a bank and the bank is not sophisticated, you're going to want a lien release. And if the bank doesn't ask for lien releases, you're going to want to get one. Now, I'd love to offer a lien release in my program, but I can't because it's privy to every state, and every state has its own law. You can literally go to a bank, or you can go to, what do you call it when you close your home, sweetie? Escrow company, and ask them, a title company, and ask them if they have a standard lien release for their state. They may be kind enough to give you one, and you can ask for a full lien release or a partial lien release. That way you now know that you're covered, that the transaction's final, all right? In my state, I have what's called a construction registry. I go into a lot of detail on this one. Maybe I just save that for the next post. I was going to go into a 10-minute discussion on that, but check out construction registry. It helps you protect your lien rights if you're a subcontractor. But with that lien release, they actually release that right because they've been paid, even if they've registered with the state construction registry. You might want to check that out. I can go into that on another day. Running out of time here. I don't want to waste too much time on that. See, we are trying to figure out the size PV array we need. It's going to be a high efficiency house, build 2 passive house or pretty good house standards. How do we figure out how big of an array? Say, let's see, Donkey. That's why hydrologists will get in there. If this is the same question from above, Dan, they will tell you with the flow rate of all that water that's coming under the home. I can tell you that if it was radon gas, we had a gas pipe that was almost 5 inches thick or 5 inches wide diameter just to help the airflow for radon gas. And water's not like a gas that needs that kind of a volume. It could be a 2-inch pipe with an array going out throughout the foundation that's perforated pipe. That's why I asked if it's muddy water and clear water. If it's muddy water, it's eventually going to fill up silt in that pipe to the point where it's going to get all clogged up, and then you're going to have a problem in 10 years. So that's why a hydrologist is going to really help you understand where that water is coming from. You don't want it coming from a sewer system, that's for sure. See, David B., Europe is crazy. They have 90-year mortgages. Oh, my goodness. And the home gets passed down to one of the kids who take over the loan. That is absolutely crazy, crazy. Leslie, how much will you save on the $96,000 excavation bid by doing it yourself? I'll save $96,000. Well, I have the equipment in-house and I'm making payments on one of them, but I've paid off everything else I've got. So it's really the payment of that heavy equipment until I move it to another job. And that's about $600 a month, but I'll have it done in about a month and a half. So, and then I'm not paying myself, because it's my own home, on all the labor. And I'm not billing myself that. If I was to do it with somebody else, of course I bill them, because the heavy equipment is a huge cost. But because I was able to, work those tools into my own company, now as a builder, I'm going to save against my own build. It's kind of like if you have a wheelbarrow and nobody else in the community has a wheelbarrow, and you're the only one with a wheelbarrow. Oh yeah, I'll let you use mine for $1 a day, and you can use mine for $1 a day. You now have that in house. And I have a Traco in my company, so I'm utilizing that to my advantage. See, is there a maximum height? Let's see.
Truss package.
Which one?
Hype stonks. My truss package went down $5,000.
Yeah, truss package went down $5,000. Yeah, things are dropping. It's a really good time to build, even though everything else looks terrible. I got my swells report back, 2.5 feet from groundwater in one location. Is this an issue for slab on grade with groundwater this close to the surface? That could be an issue, especially with high water and rain. You're going to want to talk with a geotech and find out how to ameliorate that, how to put some drainage underneath the slab before you actually pour it. Check with them on that. That's kind of shallow. If it was 4 feet, I wouldn't mind, but that's really close to the substrate of your actual slab on grade. And when they do pour that slab, make sure they put some aggregate down there, city grade, spec, road base, something compacted with some aggregate. So it's going to be harder for that water to reach up there. But if it's straight up clay, or even a silty soil, then there's not going to be some pockets of air underneath that. So it's going to have that opportunity to wick right underneath your foundation. And concrete is porous. It absorbs moisture. You want to keep that moisture away from concrete. Ian, do you have a list of these labor material breakdowns for each trade? No, I don't. That's just a huge task. I just know one of these, I've been working on a master sheet that kind of is what a lot of different subcontractors charge and how they go about charging. And a painter is different from a stucco person. A roofing is different from a tile person. They're all different. It's just kind of learning those names. And those, like for roofing, it's a square. A square is a 10 by 10 section. But in tile and flooring, it's a square foot, a 12-inch by 12-inch section. That's how they compute cost. So every trade is different. I'll have to think about that one. That's a good question, but that's something I'd need. If I can't get it on a single sheet, I get discouraged. I want it simple so that they can go to the graph to all the different subs and find out what's the typical way they bid out on their labor cost. It's a really good question, though. Is there maximum height the land can be raised with fill dirt? I've heard that land can only be raised 36 inches max for slab on grade foundation. Is this correct? You check with your HOA, check with your local building officials. If it's in a rural area, it's not so much of an issue, but if it's in a local area, it is an issue. You typically want to be at least 1 inch above the center line of the street. So if you're in a subdivision, you want that slab to be at least a foot off of the center line or the crown of the road. Go out there and they'll actually take a survey from the crown of the road and make sure that your pad is at least a foot above. And I've seen them. I built a home recently where I took it 18 inches above the center line of the street because we had some drainage issues and I didn't want to have the basement to flood and all that kind of stuff. So you want to check to see how high you can get that. And that may or may not affect the height restriction of the home. Some of them will put the height restriction at the lip of curb. Some of them will put the height restriction at grade before the building takes place. And what you're talking about is lifting it, bringing dirt up against it. And so you're lifting the whole pad up, which is going to affect your height restriction on your home. So you want to cross-check a lot of those questions you have out there. See, do you have Leslie, the checklist for subs you mentioned in your program, is that in your startup? It's in the self-managed package. If you want a sample of the checklist, just go to my site, How to Build Your Own Home, and go to the free home site selection checklist. You can get that for free. If you're new to this program, just thinking about being an owner builder, get that checklist. It's free. It gives you a sample of the checklists that I offer. It's a very thorough checklist. And a lot of people have said, oh, I wish I had this checklist before I bought my property. So if you're just thinking, get that. Go to howtobuildyourownhome.com. Very top, home site selection checklist. Get that, download it. That gives you a sample of the checklist that I offer. And I'm constantly touching up these checklists and adding to them. It's a lot of work. There's about 75 checklists during the course of construction. Let's see, we're running out of time here. Hi, Welch family. We're the Kelch family, but Welch sounds close enough. Question, do you have how to build your own home class package? I have my land, geotech report, structural utilities, a septic design, and paid for. I need bidding checklist. There's a bidding cut and paste program, and I have it mostly all done and it's uploaded, but it's for your mechanical, your framing, and all that. I don't have all that for some finished stuff, but it's just a section where you just cut and paste that and you send it off and submit a request for a bid, but you're actually giving them specifications of the things you want. But I don't have a half off. I do have scholarships available for those that are in the military and teachers and stuff like that. You can check that out as well. Hi, thumbs up. We're going to end that right here. I've got a concrete guy waiting outside for me. I got to go over a very complicated concrete job for him. Please stay alert of the market. I'm going to put a lot of links in here. Come back later and you can see them. Videos you should watch, people you should follow. It's very, very important that you do that more than ever. It used to be 10, 20 years ago, all I had to watch was the price of oil. That's not the case. You've got to watch more things. We're dealing with a moving target when we're building a home because market conditions are changing, financing is changing, interest rates are changing, the whole dynamics of the global economy is changing. You've got to be aware of that. If not, you can get caught up into a situation that could not be very good. And I don't want to see a lot of people get caught up in stuff like that. So anyway, thanks everybody for subscribing, like, share. I appreciate that. Leave some comments there. I'll try to get to them as I can next week. We'll start back up next week. Have your questions ready. And again, if you're just new, check out the First Steps program at How to Build Your Own Home. It's very affordable and it's very informative. I've had a lot of people take that class and they've actually made a lot of comments on it. So this is Keith. I'm going to head out. He's at the door right now, my concrete guy. But you guys take care and we'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.